Have you ever visited someone, sat at their kitchen table, shared a meal, maybe a cup of tea, and then drove home in silence, feeling heavier than when you arrived? Not angry, not sure what even happened, just empty. Like something was quietly taken from you, but you couldn't name what it was. If you felt that, I want you to know your feeling was not wrong. Your body and your heart were telling you something true. Today, I want to share with you 7 things that people say, just 7 phrases that reveal, whether they realize it or not, that they do not truly respect your presence. This is not a teaching of judgment. This is not a teaching of anger. This is a teaching of awareness, of the ancient Buddhist wisdom that tells us, not every door we walk through is safe for our peace. Stay with me, because by the end of this teaching, I believe you will see your relationships and your own worth very differently. More than 2,500 years ago, the Buddha was resting near the town of Nadika. His devoted attendant, Ananda, came to him and said something thoughtful. He said, "Lord, I believe that admirable friendship, having good people around us, is half of the holy life." The Buddha smiled gently, and he said something that has stayed with me for decades of practice. He said, "Say not so, Ananda, say not so. Admirable friendship is not half of the holy life. It is the whole of the holy life. The whole of it." This teaching, found in the Upada Sutta, is not merely about monks in a monastery. It is about every one of us. It is about who we choose to sit with, who we open our homes to, who we trust with our hearts. The Buddha used a beautiful word, kalyana mittata, admirable friendship, a friend who is kind, who is honest, who lifts you toward wisdom and away from suffering. He never told us to endure every relationship with passive acceptance. He never told us that endurance was the same as compassion. He told us to be wise. And wisdom begins with recognition, with seeing clearly. So let us look together at 7 phrases, 7 things that people say, and what they truly mean beneath the words. Imagine this. A woman, let's call her Margaret, drives 45 minutes to visit her son. She has not seen him in 3 weeks. She brings his favorite bread, still warm from the bakery. She rings the doorbell with a full heart. The door opens, and the first thing she hears is, "Mom, you should have called first." Not hello, not come in, not "I'm so glad to see you." You should have called first. Now, I want to be very careful here, because this phrase can mean different things depending on the relationship. There are people who have genuine, legitimate boundaries around their schedule. A young parent with a sleeping baby, someone working from home during a deadline. These are understandable and we should respect them. But I am not talking about one honest, occasional moment of poor timing. I am talking about the pattern. The person for whom your arrival is always a disruption, for whom your presence is always inconvenient, for whom the first word spoken every time is correction, not welcome. In the Pali texts, the word metta describes a quality of goodwill so open, so unconditional, that the similes used for it include a mother's love for her only child, not a love with a schedule, not a love with an appointment. True warmth, true care does not need a calendar. When someone consistently makes you feel that you must justify your arrival, they are telling you something important. Your presence is not something they treasure. And you, dear friend, deserve to be treasured. A man I will call Robert had a friend from his working years. They had known each other for 32 years, through career changes, through illness, through the loss of spouses. But sometime after retirement, every time Robert called, every time he suggested lunch or a walk or even just a phone conversation, the answer was always a variation of the same thing. "I'm too busy right now, maybe next week." Next week became next month. Next month became never. Robert would sit by his window some evenings and wonder, what did I do wrong? He did nothing wrong. This is what I want you to hear clearly. A person who consistently has no time for you is not a person who has a full schedule. A person who consistently has no time for you is a person who has made a choice. Everyone is busy. The Buddha himself, teaching across entire kingdoms, receiving thousands of visitors, found time for the sorrowful, the confused, the lonely. He found time for the grieving mother who came to him carrying her dead child. He stopped, he sat, he listened. Kalyanamamittata, admirable friendship, does not require perfect availability. It does not ask you to drop everything at every moment. But it does ask for sincere effort, for the genuine intention to show up, even imperfectly. If someone has offered you next week for years, that is not busyness, that is distance. And recognizing distance honestly is not bitterness, it is clarity. There is a reason the Buddha taught Satya, truthfulness, as one of the foundations of right speech. Truth is not comfortable. It does not always arrive gently. Sometimes, truth is a conversation we have been avoiding for years. Imagine a man who long ago was deeply hurt by his brother. Not a misunderstanding, a real wound. Something that was done or not done during a difficult season of their lives. He has carried it quietly for a long time, and one afternoon, with courage and vulnerability, he brings it up. His brother looks at him and says, "Why do you always bring up the past? That was years ago, let it go." And just like that, the conversation is over. Now I want to make a distinction here because it is important. There is a kind of letting go that is holy. It is the letting go we practice in meditation, the conscious, voluntary release of resentment for our own freedom. That is a beautiful and necessary practice. But being told to let go by the very person who caused the wound, before the wound has been acknowledged, before you have been heard, before there has been even the simplest expression of care, that is not wisdom, that is erasure. A relationship cannot truly heal around a silence that one person has imposed on the other. And someone who responds to your honesty with, "Why do you always bring up the past?" is not inviting healing. They are protecting their own comfort at the expense of your dignity. You deserve to be heard. In any relationship worth keeping, you must be able to speak. Of all the phrases we will discuss today, this one may be the most quietly damaging, because it does not just dismiss what you said, it dismisses who you are. Consider Dorothy, a woman who for years watched her sister-in-law make small, cutting remarks at family gatherings. A comment about her weight, a joke about her health, a casual remark about her choices. And every time Dorothy quietly said, "That hurt," the response was the same. "Oh, Dorothy, you're too sensitive. I didn't mean anything by it." After enough repetitions of this, Dorothy stopped saying anything at all. She learned to smile, to absorb, to pretend. This is what the phrase does. It teaches us to distrust our own experience. But listen to what the Buddha teaches about Vedana, feeling tone, sensation, the quality of our moment-to-moment experience. He describes it as one of the 5 aggregates, one of the fundamental components of what it means to be a conscious, living being. Our feelings are not decorations. They are not weaknesses. They are real. Buddhist practice does not teach us to become numb. It teaches us to observe our feelings with wisdom, to neither cling to them nor push them away. But it never asks us to pretend they don't exist. And it certainly does not ask us to let someone else tell us that what we feel is wrong. If your feelings are consistently treated as a problem, if the person's response to your pain is to correct you, that is not a safe place for your heart. Trust what you feel. It is the beginning of wisdom. There is a teaching I return to often from the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Samma Vacha, right speech. The Buddha was precise about this. He said that right speech is truthful, it is kind, it is timely, and it is beneficial. Words that cause harm, even wrapped in laughter, are not right speech. There is no exception in the texts for "But I was joking." Imagine a family dinner. The conversation turns to an elderly uncle. His memory lapses are exaggerated and performed for the table's amusement. Or a grandmother's cooking is mocked in a way that everyone laughs at except her. Or an old friend's health struggles become the punchline of a story told at his expense. And if anyone objects, the shield appears immediately. "It was just a joke. You're so serious. Can't you take a joke?" Here is the truth beneath this phrase. Humor in healthy relationships brings people together. It finds the absurdity in shared experiences. It laughs with, not at. But humor used to diminish, to poke at vulnerabilities, to test the limits of what someone will accept is not real humor. It is power dressed in a punchline. Sammavacha asks us to ask one question before we speak. Does this help? Does this lift? Does this bring even a small measure of goodness? Words that wound do not stop wounding because they were delivered with a smile. And if someone tells you that you cannot take a joke every time they hurt you, they are not a comedian. They are a person who has decided that your feelings are less important than their entertainment. In all my years of teaching, sitting with people in moments of grief, confusion, and heartbreak, I have noticed something. The conversations that most need to happen are always the ones that someone is trying to avoid. There is a man I will call George. For many years, his closest companion, the person he shared his life with, refused to discuss certain things. His concerns about the future, his feelings of loneliness, his need, sometimes, simply to be known. Whenever George tried to open these doors, the answer came quickly. "We don't need to talk about that." The doors stayed shut, and so did something inside of George. The Buddhist quality of karuna, compassion, is often translated as the wish for beings to be free from suffering. But at its root, the Pali word carries another meaning: to tremble at the pain of another, to be moved by it, to not look away. A person who truly cares for you will not always find these conversations easy. They may be uncomfortable. They may not know what to say, but they will try. They will sit with you in the discomfort because you matter more than their convenience. When someone consistently refuses to engage with what is real, what is tender, what is true for you, they are not protecting you. They are protecting themselves. And a relationship where only one person's comfort is being guarded is not yet a real relationship. You deserve someone who will not look away from you. This phrase is perhaps the most subtle of all 7, and in some ways, the most total. Because "you always do this" is not a statement about one moment. It is a verdict on your entire character. It reaches back through years and forward into the future and declares, "This is who you are, and it will never be different." Consider a daughter, now in her 60s, who tells her family that she needs a little more help during a health challenge, and she is met with, "You always make everything about yourself." Or a man who expresses that he felt excluded from a family decision and hears, "You always overreact to everything." The word "always" is doing something very specific here. It is not describing a behavior. It is defining a person, reducing them to a single narrative, a fixed story, a closed case. But the Buddha's teaching on anicca, impermanence, tells us something essential. Everything changes. Every person, every moment, every situation is in constant flux. To say that someone always does anything is to refuse the truth of impermanence. It is to see a human being as a fixed object rather than an evolving, suffering, striving soul. When someone uses always or never to describe you, they are not seeing you. They are seeing a story they have built about you, and they would rather hold on to that story than encounter who you actually are. You have changed. You are changing. And any relationship that denies this, that insists on a diminished version of you, is a relationship with a ghost, not with the living person you have become. You are more than their story. Now, I want to speak carefully about what we do with this awareness. Because the Buddhist path is never a path of anger. It is never a path of punishment. It is never a path of building walls and calling it strength. What I am offering today is not a reason to cut people off with cold satisfaction. It is not permission to judge everyone who has ever said one clumsy, difficult thing. People are complicated. People are wounded. Many of the people in our lives who say these 7 things are not malicious. They are simply unaware. They carry their own suffering, their own defenses, their own patterns that no one ever helped them see. We can understand this. We can hold compassion for it. But, and this is essential, understanding someone's suffering does not require absorbing it. There is a phrase I often share in retreat. You can love someone deeply and still choose not to be harmed by them. This is not a contradiction of the Buddhist teaching on love. It is the teaching on love, applied also to yourself. The Buddha spoke of metta, loving kindness, as a boundless quality that radiates in all directions. But he also taught that this same compassion begins at home. It begins with the recognition that your own heart, your own well-being, your own peace, these are not less important than anyone else's. They are equally sacred. Setting a boundary is not an act of hatred. It is an act of wisdom. It says, I see clearly. I choose peace. I will not pretend that what is harmful is harmless. A simple practice to carry with you. After each visit, after each significant encounter, find 5 quiet minutes. Perhaps in your car before you start the engine. Perhaps at your kitchen table with a cup of tea. Close your eyes, take one slow breath, and ask yourself honestly, do I feel lighter or heavier than before I arrived? That is your compass. Not judgment, not comparison, just the quiet, honest signal of your own heart. If you feel lighter, nourish that relationship. Return to it. Water it like a garden. If you feel heavier, consistently, repeatedly, over time, let that be the information it is. You do not owe endless presence to spaces that diminish you. At this season of your life, with all that you have lived, all that you have loved, all that you have survived, your time and your energy are among the most precious things you possess. Choose wisely where you spend them. Choose the doors where when you knock, you are welcomed. Choose the tables where your voice is heard. Choose the friends who, when you leave them, make you feel not smaller, but more fully yourself. The Buddha once described the ideal companion as one who is compassionate in your difficulty, does not abandon you in times of loss, does not look down on you, encourages you toward what is good. May you find such companions. May you recognize them when they appear, and may you have the wisdom, gentle, courageous, clear wisdom to release what no longer serves your peace. You have lived long enough to know what it feels like to be truly seen. Do not settle for less. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you walk in light. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Of these 7 phrases we explored today, which one have you heard most in your life? Leave it in the comments below. Just the number, just the sign. You don't need to explain. I read every one of your messages, and knowing your experience helps me bring you teachings that truly matter. And if this talk brought you some peace today, please share it with someone you love, someone who may need to hear it. On this channel, Lotus Dharma Path, we offer a new Dharma talk each week. Quiet teachings for a peaceful life. If you have not yet subscribed, I warmly invite you to join our community. Next week, we will explore the opposite question. 5 signs that someone truly respects you. Because wisdom is not only about what to move away from, it is also about what to move toward. Until then, walk gently.